Hello and welcome to the ZX Spectrum Compilation Chart Challenge. It's been around 15 years since I last made a YouTube video and quite a lot has changed, but if I can get used to the new surroundings, hopefully this is going to become a regular series where I review and rate the many varied compilations released for the undoubted king of the home computers, the ZX Spectrum. The idea for this series is not my own though. It was inspired by my good friend Matt Korn and his excellent Commodore 64 compilation video series. Having just finished working my way through his large back catalogue of videos, I decided to look for something similar for my weapon of choice, the Speccy. But apart from a few standalone videos of the big hitters of the day, I came up empty. So what's a bored lad with time on his hands going to do? No, not that. He's going to do it himself. No wait, that still sounds wrong. He's going to make it himself. I've tweaked the rules a little bit for my challenge though, so let's go through them now. So first up, all the compilations must have a minimum of 3 games. Some people might class 2 games on a tape as being a compilation, but I don't. 3 games or it's not coming in. Next, all compilations with a recommended retail price of £5 or greater will be classed as full price. Anything below that will be designated as budget. That might be an area of debate for some people who may see budget as being $2.99 or less, or maybe even $3.99, but I'm sticking with a £5. Each compilation is going to be scored out of 100 using the defined scoring rules that will show on the next page. A league table will then be produced with the highest scoring 12 compilations being featured. There'll be a league table for budget only releases, and there'll also be a table that covers both budget and full price games. I'll be scoring each game individually out of 10, and then we'll work out an average game score for the compilation. The packaging will also receive a score out of 10, and value for money will be calculated by dividing the total game score by the price in pence to give us the pence per point score. And where that result is less than 10p per point, the compilation is awarded a value for money rating of 10 points. If it's between 10 and 19 pence, it gets 9 points. 20 and 29 is 8 points, and so on, right up to anything that's 90p or more per point will get just 1 point. To ensure that the game scores take priority, however, the scores are weighted using the formula that's on the screen now. The end result is that we get a score out of 100, and that will be used in the league tables. And because I'm a bit of a masochist, I thought I'd give myself a little more torture by adding some bonus content. So at the end of each show, I'll be working my way through the infamous Cascade Cassette 50. I did own it back in the day, but only loaded the first half dozen or so before giving up. So I'm going to be trying 1 game per episode to see if the biggest compilation ever released for the Speccy really is as bad as all that. So that's enough waffle from me. All that's left to do now is to see what compilation we're going to be looking at this time. In the future, I hope to get some audience participation and let you guys pick the compilation that I review. But as I'm only reviewing compilations where I have a physical copy in hand, and the fact that I've only just started buying them, so I have very few in my collection, we're going to start with Virgin Games 1985 6-game pack, Now Games. Now Games was priced at a very reasonable £8.95 back in the day, and as this advert from the time shows, it was also available for the Commodore 64. It's a vibrant ad that's obviously riffing off the pop style of the Now That's What I Call Music pop compilations that had just released its 5th incarnation when this pack came out. The ad claims that Now Games has 6 hits to hit you for 6, and it's a chart hit compilation of 6 top-selling games from 5 software companies, namely Beyond, The Edge, Interceptor, Virgin and Microgen, and that you'll not find better value or variety of gameplay all inside one box. And risking the IP police, they also proclaimed, now that's what I call software. At the bottom, it urges you to rush to your nearest good software retailer and increase your games collection by 6 in one fell swoop. So that's what I did when I picked up a copy for £3 from seller Ross Waterston on the Sinclair for Sale Facebook group. So now we know the who, what, when and how much, let's head to the games room and see what it's like. Okay, so let's have a look at Now Games. It's a single dual, as you can see. Nice clear back instead of the solid black ones that I'm not a fan of. So as you can see from the image, it's quite a funky cover with lots of colour. 6 sizzling games. It's got a number of images of, I assume, relating to the games. The horse, probably Lords of Midnight. There's a car exhaust. Is that related to Pyjamarama. I know Wally Week was in Automania. Was that what it was called? And so possibly Starloop could be the spaceship. I don't know. they seem a bit random. It's a nice, vibrant cover, but I'm not sure it's that relevant. Funny enough, the only place you can see what system it's for is this little bit here. It says for the Spectrum, which I thought might have been, you know, on the spine or something, but the spine's just Now Games from Virgin, and that's it. But stands out on the shelf, I would have thought. Yeah, and the back lists the games. We've got Lords of Midnight, Brian Bloodaxe, Strangeloop, Pyjamarama, Arabian Nights, Falcon Patrol. That's actually Falcon Patrol II. You can't see it on there. It looks like it's Falcon Patrol, but there is II behind the bend, fold, crease, wow, whatever. Yeah, so nice looking cover. Let's have a look what's inside. So first of all, we'll look at the tape. Just printed on. Looks like a music cassette, if you ask me. If that had Kajagoogoo or Duran Duran on or something, I wouldn't be surprised. But no, it's 6 video games, and that's all it says on there. Now Games for the Spectrum 48K, side A, side B. No extra information, so keep the inlay, or you won't know what game or what side of the tape to load. And on the inside of the tape, you'll see there are, so there's the cover, you've got the first 2 of the games, that's Lords of Midnight and Brian Bloodaxe there, and then we also have the other 4 games on there, screenshot and a short description of each, and then we've got the loading instructions and an area to put your tape counter numbers to ease your loading for future loads. So everything you'd need, nice and colourful. I think that's quite a good quality inlay for a game of the time. What you also got was one of these, instruction booklet. Now, I didn't get one with mine, and most of the copies you'll find on eBay don't have the inlay. So I went to Spectrum Computing, downloaded a PDF, printed it out on double-sided A3 paper. Well, all paper's double-sided, isn't it really? I printed it double-sided on A3 paper, but it folds into 7 pages, and the folds went a bit funny. By the time it got to the 7th, I'm in the middle of the sentence, but it doesn't affect it when you're reading it. But I've not quite got the sizing perfect, but other than that, it looks nice. It fits nicely into the single jewel box. So yeah, I was quite pleased it came out like that. And it's comprehensive for some games. Lords of Midnight, as you would expect, takes up 6 of those 7 pages. A lot more comprehensive for that than, for example, Brian Bloodaxe, which basically just gives you the keys. Strangeloop has got quite a bit of information, but still none the wiser after reading it. Tells the Arabian Nights, doesn't really tell you anything. And Falcon Patrol II has got quite a lot of information, but again, probably not needed. So yeah, lots of information on there. Not all needed, but some of it definitely is. So yeah, I'm quite impressed with the package to get all of that into a single dual cassette case, and for it all to look nice, and yeah, quite impressed. Okay, so let's take a look at the first game on the first compilation. And the first game is going to be Falcon Patrol II. Now, on the back of the cover, this is the final game, game number 6. And partly because I'm feeling rebellious, and partly because I'm putting off playing Lords of Midnight, I'm going to do these games in reverse order. So we're starting with Falcon Patrol II, which is a funny old game on the basis that Falcon Patrol was never released for the Spectrum. It was a Commodore 64 only game, and the blurb about Falcon Patrol 2, or FP2 as it seems to want us to call it, is that continuing the success of the Commodore 64 Falcon Patrol Chicago CES 1984 award-winning game, Virgin Games proudly presents the sequel on the Spectrum. Falcon Patrol II, having obtained the upper hand in the desperate desert war, the enemy is about to launch its final offensive on your battered town. Into the fray pour the enemy's helicopter attack squadrons, carrying deadly missiles, flak batteries and radar jammers. In order to combat the manoeuvrability and elusive tactics of these helicopters, your Falcon fighter has now been armed with air-to-ground as well as air-to-air missiles. Ooh, sounds exciting. 16 level game with increasing difficulty, 3 types of enemy helicopters, solo gunship and transport, and air-to-ground missiles and air-to-air missiles. If you thought Falcon Patrol was good, ... Well, sounds exciting enough, and I think that's a really nice loading screen we've got there as well. Lovely little drawing of the Falcon jet fighter. I did initially think, but them little 2D helicopters on the loading screen kind of ruin the effect, but then I looked at the poster and the 2D helicopters are on there as well, so you can't really blame loading screen designer, you can't blame him for that. But there you go, that's Falcon Patrol 2, so let's get on and play it. So the game starts with a jaunty little ditty. Doesn't last long, but it's nice while it lasts. And then we get a message from GHQ via a video printer, so slow and turgid that I've sped it up 4 times for this video. So you can sit through that, and it tells you almost exactly what it says in the inlay, the different helicopters you're going to face, what kind of missiles they have, how many points you get for them. It goes through the controls, blah blah blah. It's really dull, and I wouldn't recommend you sit through it. And then you get started with your Falcon fighter. The problem here is that you have to sit there and wait for 10 seconds or so for the plane to refuel, and you have to do that every time you lose a life as well. So that's really annoying, especially with the droning noise that goes on while refueling's happening. But once you get going, the graphics are quite nice. They're very colourful, very cartoony, but the animation on the plane's nice. The helicopters look okay-ish. But the background is just a plain blue sky, but what more do you expect? Maybe a few clouds, but we're flying over the desert. There's pyramids there, there's lots of cars and transporters, and wrecked buildings and the likes, lots of silos. You'll see some blue pads that you can land on and refuel. I never once during the games I've played needed to refuel. Usually I lost a life before I needed to and got full tank of fuel when a new life started. But what you might need to do is land to get your ammo back up, because I definitely found that I'd used up my ammo on a couple of games. Initial thoughts are that it's nice, it scrolls smoothly, it's a full wraparound Defender style shooter. You can shoot straight, or you can shoot kind of on a downward trajectory and by pulling down and pressing fire. And yeah, everything was looking good until I shot somebody and flew too close to the dust cloud and flak that came from the wreckage, and unfortunately the collision detection is just awful, and you fly too close to the wreckage, you'll just crash into it, and then your plane will just fall to the ground very slowly. And unfortunately, for a game that is quite slow, this kind of sequence just makes it worse. And it's such a simple mechanic that they could have changed to speed the game up, because you can zip along at quite a pace, but the risk of doing that is just so great that you might shoot a helicopter that's just coming onto the screen and you've got no opportunity to get away from it. So the only tactic you've got to play the game is to play slow and steady. Just take slight movements to the right or to the left, take your shot and be prepared to move up or down. And it is just that shrapnel kind of issue that spoils this being a really decent game. I mean, at the end of the day, it is only a clone of Harrier Attack. It's nothing special, and it was never going to win any awards, although Falcon Patrol 1 did apparently. But yeah, it's just such a disappointing thing that they've included that, or at least not changed the collision detection on it, because it's massive, the dust cloud, and you know, I've crashed there and you see him fall into the earth. It just spoils what could have been a really decent game. So yeah, I had a lot of fun playing it, but would I rush back to it? No, I certainly wouldn't, because there's better games of this type out there. But it's not a complete waste. It was fun for a short burst, but it's certainly not going to be scoring too highly with me in the individual game scores. So, taking into account the smooth scrolling, nice but dated graphics, the virtually non-existent sound, and the slow nature of the gameplay, I'm afraid Falcon Patrol II only manages a very average score of 5 out of 10. Next up, we've got Tales of the Arabian Nights. Not a game I was aware of before this compilation, but it was released by Interceptor Software in 1985, and on the face of it is a standard platformer. Arabian Nights tells the story of the Kalandar prince Imrahil, whose sister has been taken by the vicious Sultan Saladin as his latest wife. Due to Saladin's irrational fear of his wife's unfaithfulness, he has each wife put to death after just one night together. So Imrahil boards Sinbad's ship and makes haste to Baghdad to save the princess Anitra. With traditional platformer levels mixed with side-scrolling raft and magic carpet rides, the Tales of the Arabian Nights promises screen after screen of Eastern wonder. And if this loading screen, apparently showing an Arab gentleman just going over the peak of a Big Dipper on a magic carpet themed roller coaster, we're going to get just that. Tales of the Arabian Nights has 8 levels which consist of 5 unique platform levels and 3 travelling levels, the first of which is aboard Sinbad's ship. The aim is to collect the golden jugs, but they must be collected in order that they spell out the word Arabian. This means you will need to employ some strategy as you traverse the screens, avoiding cannonballs, a green octopus, and what looks like a giant flying turkey. I was pleasantly surprised with the graphics on the whole, despite the odd flicker and some attribute clash. That is, except for the main player sprite, which is poorly drawn and animated like all 4 of his limbs are in plaster. Sound, though, is completely absent throughout the game, not even a small tune on the menu screen, so put on the soundtrack to Aladdin or some other appropriate tunes while you play.
Arabian night, like Arabian dream. This mystical land of magic and sand is more than it seems.
The collision detection can be a bit unforgiving, and some of the jumps are a bit fiddly, but by far the biggest issue is the dreaded fall from a great height. Completing Sinbad's ship then sees you aboard a small raft as you row upstream against the current, avoiding what I assume are catapulted boulders. You have to clear 5 screens to get to the next level, but in all the games I've played of Arabian Nights, I've never once been hit by a boulder, and the travelling levels do appear to be nothing more than filler. Next up is the caves. It's similar to level 1, but a little more fiddly due to our hero's large arcing jump and a few buggy moments, particularly in the top left hand segment. From here we get our first taste of a magic carpet, as we once again get a filler level where we simply have to avoid the congestion on Baghdad's busiest thoroughfare at rush hour. Except it seems only one other person owns a magic carpet, so there's no challenge at all. Three more platform levels will get you inside the castle before you can then fly away to freedom on another magic carpet ride, except you don't actually get to freedom as the 8 screens then begin again. Despite its limited nature, I actually got a lot of fun out of Tales of the Arabian Nights, and it's a game I would certainly play again. It loses marks for its poor main character sprite and for the absence of sound, but I'm more than happy to give it a score of 6 out of 10. With a little more care and a little more challenge in the travelling stages, this could have been much more, but for what it is, I quite liked it. Released in 1984, Pyjamarama is the second game in Microgen's Wally Week series after his debut in Automania. In In Pyjamarama, Wally Week, our working class hero, has fallen asleep after a hard day's slog and forgotten to wind his alarm clock. You must play as Wally's consciousness and carry out various tasks with the ultimate goal of finding the key to wind the clock and ensure Wally gets up for another day's grind. Wally's second outing was a hit across the board, scooping a Crash Smash, multiple Game of the Month awards and scoring no less than 8 out of 10 in every review that I could find. The presentation's excellent, with a great loading screen and stylish black and white loading lines setting the scene, before a great interpretation of Gershon Kingsley's 1969 pop sensation, Popcorn. Once in game, we get a nicer track mode that shows a collection of the room screens we'll see on our journey through Dreamland. In-game presentation is equally high, with a status bar at the top showing lives, snooze energy displayed as a glass of milk that empties as your energy depletes, and information regarding the items that you're carrying. The graphics are bright, colourful and well drawn, with some nice animation, particularly for Wally himself, although there is a ton of colour clash and some unfortunate occasions where Wally is almost invisible as he passes by some large barrels, but that in no way detracts from a really nice looking, fairly early Spectrum game. I'll admit that the game isn't immediately accessible, as it doesn't give you any clue as to what to do, or for that matter, does it tell you when you've done something right? And this meant back in the day I gave up on the game far too easily. But nowadays, a quick internet search gave me enough pointers to keep me exploring for quite a while. Some tasks are relatively straightforward, like collecting a bucket and filling it with water, which will then stop the plants from trying to kill you, or collecting a pound coin and changing it for a penny at the change machine, allowing you to spend a penny in the bathroom. But others are a lot more cryptic, and whilst the game can be completed fairly quickly, you're likely to be at it for a while until you uncover all of the jobs you must perform. To 100% the game, you need to pick up all of the items, even the useless ones, so completionists also have an extra challenge. So despite my teenage ambivalence, I thoroughly enjoyed revisiting the game, and I'm going to award it a score of 8 out of 10. Strangeloop is a game I'd never heard of before this compilation, and looking at the inlay I would have assumed it was a comic book style arcade adventure. However, what we actually get is a twist on a futuristic platformer, where you scoot across 250 screens on a jet cycle, once you've retrieved it, shooting enemies and trying to fix oxygen leaks to reach the all-important control room and shut down the reactor and save the day. Written by the infamous Gang of Five, from an idea by Charles Goodwin, Strangeloop was released by Virgin in 1984 to great critical acclaim. It was a PCG hit in Personal Computer Games magazine, 9 out of 10 in Sinclair User, and a very respectable 86% in Crash. Aliens have invaded Earth's major robot-making plant and started reprogramming the robots into deadly weapons. You must battle through 250 screens to reach the control room, with just your spacesuit and laser pistol to save the day, or the Earth is doomed. The advertising blurb suggests that Strangeloop is a Jet Set Willy style romp through a robot factory, but I really didn't get that kind of feel from the game, as the awkward keyboard-only handling, confusing screens with large conveyor belt pillars, and weedy laser gun making it difficult to feel like you were making any progress. Gaining access to the jet cycle early on will make zipping about the screens much quicker, but it doesn't make the controls any easier, and I often found myself bouncing between the screens. It's also a fuel drain, so that's another thing to watch out for. There are some really good ideas here, and simpler controls, like having a single fire button to shoot both up and across instead of 2 separate buttons, and adding in joystick controls would remove much of the frustration. but unfortunately I found progress slow and reward even less. There's a useful save game option, but there wasn't enough enjoyment in the game to compel me to use it, and for that reason I can only score Strangeloop 6 out of 10. The Edge released Brian Bloodaxe in 1985 with the promise of primary imbalance, suggesting that anything could happen, and the Monty Python references littered throughout, it's hard to disagree. Split over 100 screens, each based on a UK location, the game claims to be the first of its kind, as it combines the complexity of a text adventure with arcade action and wacky humour to show that lateral thinking isn't just something you do in bed, in the bath, or after a pint. The magazines were almost unanimous in their praise, with 8 out of 10 all round. That is, except for Your Computer, who called it an overhyped little number that should have been released as a budget title in their 2 out of 5 review. The excellent loading screen, showing the game name apparently carved in stone by a Viking's axe, is soon replaced by a rousing rendition of John Philip Sousa's The Liberty Bell March, better known to Brits of a certain age as the theme to Monty Python. Whilst Brian's far from original, one of the first things to strike me about the game was the way it takes a worn-out premise and adds some simple new mechanics to breathe new life. Things like your boots being impervious to all enemies, meaning you can jump on their heads to reach higher or lower platforms without the fear of insta-death. The use of Brian's horned helmet to grab onto the platforms above, whilst sometimes being annoying, can also be a great way to escape an enemy below. The majority of the game, however, is the traditional platform adventure fare. Get an item to react with another item to reach further into the game map until you reach your goal. But what Brian Bloodaxe does, it does with charm and humour, meaning that despite the odd flickery sprite or tricky jump, you'll always laugh off a failure rather than cursing the game. The more muted version of the Liberty Bell March that plays in-game is also a welcome addition, and along with the functional HUD and dancing life counter, it all adds up to a polished, fun and challenging game for fans of a genre that was hitting its high watermark in 1985. So despite having absolutely no joy trying to combine the bomb and the detonator to free the green key, I'm going to give Brian and his bloody axe 7 points. And now for something completely different. The Lords of Midnight is Mike Singleton's magnum opus, a game so revolutionary that it coined its own term for the way it realistically conveyed distance, perspective and direction. That was landscaping, and in 1984 this strategy adventure used landscaping to convey over 32,000 different viewpoints across its vast map, whilst letting you control up to 16 characters while you attempt one of 3 different strategies to defeat the evil Witch King Doomdark. No wonder Beyond went big on marketing The Lords of Midnight as the world's first ever epic game. Whether you choose to wage war and seize the citadel of Ushgarok by force, or head on the noble quest to destroy the source of Doomdark's power, the Ice Crown, or do both to experience the full epic adventure, this and many more choices are your own. Helping to create immersion right from the start, the vibrant loading screen is in effect simply in-game graphics, so there's no jarring imagery once you get into the game, just a singular world created by a man so obviously besotted with Tolkien and his own magnum opus. I mentioned at the start of this video that I was reversing the order of the games for this review so as to leave The Lords of Midnight for last. But don't think of that as any form of tribute to the game. Far from it. Not only are fantasy and strategy the 2 game genres that I hold least esteem for, the game's odd keyboard placement meant that an overlay was provided with the original release. Unfortunately, that overlay was for an original 48K Spectrum, and for the purposes of recording the game footage, I use a Spectrum Next. I did attempt to download and print the overlay and make do, but being slightly out of line I kept pressing the wrong thing and tearing my printed template. The only thing for it was to use a rubber keyed Spectrum, but I didn't have the means to record from one of those. That is, until I remembered the retro games tribute, the Spectrum, which I bought on release and have never really used, so I quickly hooked it up and was good to go. As far as first impressions go, Lords of Midnight hit the spot. The landscaping gimmick turned out not to be a gimmick after all, and the sense of freedom that 8 views of the same grid position gives is quite amazing, and starting off with 5 characters gave you a lot to go at. For a non-fantasy fan it was probably too much to go at though, and I did find myself ignoring the quest and just wandering the land of midnight to see what I could find. I did manage to recruit guards, find horses and gain the services of 2 further lords, but in all honesty I had little idea of what to do with them and no plan whatsoever, and at the end of the day this kind of game is just never going to be my thing, regardless of how incredibly clever I think it is. But that doesn't mean I can't appreciate it and marvel at the achievement, and for that reason I'm still going to give Lords of Midnight a score of 8 out of 10, and I'll recommend it to anyone with a passing interest in fantasy worlds. But, as there's absolutely no sound in the game whatsoever, maybe get yourself an Enya tape to listen to while you while away the hours in the lands of midnight. So now we've experienced everything that Now Games has got to offer, let's have a look at what the magazines of the day thought of it. We'll start with Home Computing Weekly, who put Virgin Games Supremo Nick Alexander on the cover as he raved about the £100,000 advertising campaign that was just about to hit our TV screens. Next we have Popular Computing Weekly, who gave the compilation Pick of the Week, calling it excellent value and commenting that Lords of Midnight alone usually costs more than the compilation. The following week, PCW delivered its full review, advising buyers not to confuse the tape with Now That's What I Call Music, quipping that the reviewer doesn't know which is worse coming through your Walkman earphones, Specky loading noises or the Thompson twins, a comment that somehow is a bit harsh on both the Specky and TT. Regarding the games, they say it's heavy on the arcade adventures, with Brian Bloodaxe bearing a strong resemblance to Manic Miner, Strangeloop adding complexity, and Arabian Nights bringing pre-planning and careful timing. No thoughts are given on Pyjamarama, but the review states that these games prove that there can still be variety within the genre. Falcon Patrol II is seen as the only iffy offering, and Lords of Midnight is declared an undeniable classic, all adding up to a smash hit and a rating of what appears to be 5 portable TVs out of 5 portable TVs. CMVG covered the package on its Christmas stocking-themed compilations review page. It didn't give any scores or real critique, but did say that if you've already bought 1 or 2 of these games, then you may wince at how cheaply they can now be bought as a set. Excellent value and a wise buy for the cash conscious. When it comes to scoring the compilations, I'll be sharing the average game score across all the games, giving a rating for the packaging and also calculating a pence per point score that's used to determine value for money. These 3 scores will then be used to rate the compilation out of 100. Where any compilation hits a score of 70%, it will be honoured with the ZX Compilation Chart Challenge Mega Pack badge. 80% and it gets a mega hit, but if we're ever lucky enough to find a package that hits the dizzy heights of 90%, we've reserved the honour of the ZXCCC Mega Smash. But let's hope we don't see many hit the floor of 40%, as that will get them the title of Mega Turkey. So looking at the individual game scores, we see that Now Games has managed 2 8s, a 7, 2 6s and a 5 for an average game score of 6.67. For the packaging score, even though it's only a single dual case, I was impressed by the colourful design, the use of a fully transparent case, screenshots of the games, a tape counter table and the all-important manual, given that complex games like Strangeloop and Lords of Midnight were included. For those reasons, I'm going to score Now Games a 7. Value-wise, Now Games gained a total of 40 points from a price point of £8.95, which works out at 22 pence per point. This gives a value for money score of 8. Feeding these scores into the sausage machine gives us an overall score for Now Games of 70%, which is enough to claim our first ever ZXCCC Mega Pack Award. Now, as I'm the kind of guy who celebrates the little wins and loves to see the league table even after the first game of the season, let's have a look at Now Games sitting proud atop the summit. Virgin also have another reason to celebrate, as they also sit atop our constructors table too. So that's it for the first episode of the ZX Spectrum Compilation Chart Challenge. Please do leave me some feedback in the comments and let me know what compilation memories you have. I'll be back soon with a new episode, but stick around for the post-credit scene where I look at the first game in my Cascade Cassette 50 penance. Hello again, and thanks for sticking around for the first of hopefully 50 bonus reviews for the infamous Cascade Cassette 50. I won't go into any detail about the full package, as that'll be done once all the game reviews are complete, so let's dive straight into our first game, which is Alien Attack. Now, you may be wondering why we're not starting with Muncher, which is the game that's first on side A of the tape, but as many of us probably only loaded the first few games before giving up on the package, I thought I'll make sure I get to see some of the games that I've never tried, and I'm going to be playing them in alphabetical order. As is common with most of the games on Cassette 50, we don't know who the author is, and there are obviously no loading screens, so let's just run the programme and get on with it. So, the first thing we notice after the information screen appears is that we get this constant and annoying beeping noise. I believe this is on a lot of the games, and it really does my head in, so before we even start to try a game, let's go into the basic programme and delete the offending line of code. There it is at line 1800. Let's get rid of that and go back to the game. Much better. The info screen informs us that alien spacecraft have been spotted, and you must use your underground lasers to destroy them before they can land and conquer the Earth. You only have 50 shots available to you, and if you miss, the spacecraft will teleport elsewhere on the screen, closer to the ground. Controls are all 10 number keys, with 1 being the far most left of the screen and 0 being the far most right. Selecting G to start a game allows us to choose from 3 difficulties, driven by the number of aliens that need to be defeated to win. I'll pick the middle level, with 30 aliens to kill from my 50 shots. With 10 firing positions, the game's simply recognising where on screen the alien is and selecting the corresponding number to shoot your laser. Get it right and the alien's destroyed, but miss and it'll reappear at a random position closer to the ground. Misses also have the effect of reducing your available bullets, and if the shots left become less than the ships left, then you won't be able to complete the screen, and this actually created a little excitement as I found myself constantly glancing up at the status bar to see if I was on track. A simple premise, but surprisingly good fun for a quick burst. With only 4 fingers on each hand, you need to get your placement right, and I found the best tactic was to cover numbers 2 to 9 with my fingers, as the 1 and 10 extremities are the easiest to identify on screen, so shifting your fingers across to those buttons is less fraught. There isn't much more to say about Alien Attack, and I may end up repeating myself throughout this series when I say that it has a modicum of fun for a short play, but leaves little incentive to come back. However, I did find that the game made me think about my finger positions on the keyboard, and do believe that the game could easily have been translated to being a fun typing tutor, were it to include levels where the rest of the keyboard is also used, like a rudimentary typing of the dead. So all that's left now is to marvel at the AI-generated look at what Alien Attack may have looked like if it had its own release, and to give it a score. It's hard to judge where to put the games on Cassette 50, and I expect any game hitting 5 out of 10 will be exceptional for the package. I'm also conscious not to box myself in early on by going too high or too low, but as I said, I quite enjoyed Alien Attack for the 10 or 15 minutes that I played it, so I'm going to score it right in the middle of the expected scoring range and give it 3 out of 10. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you soon on the ZX Spectrum Compilation Chart Challenge.